Hello and welcome back to NHB Retro. Today we're looking at this TRS-80 Color Computer that I just got in. It's an interesting looking machine. Looks like it's had an interesting life. We'll go into that in a bit here. Unfortunately, I have been through this machine a little bit, just briefly, and I've already collected a baggie of spare parts, or rather of parts that have broken off. And let's see if I can do this. I've taken the screws out of the case already, but let's see if we can flip it over anyway. Oh yeah. You can see here that this part of the case, which I think is actually connected, it's attached with some adhesive to the power supply on the other side. So no doubt this thing in shipping took a jolt that was powerful enough to motivate that power supply hard enough to break the case. And you probably heard there are a few parts flopping around in there. I think that's mostly the RF shield, which is not secure. Let's take a real quick look at the back here. It's pretty interesting. Caught my eye. You can see that in addition to a missing reset switch, it has a mod. So we've got an audio video mod there. So let's real quickly, like I said, I've taken the top off this already, mostly to collect up the parts that I heard flopping around. Let's go ahead and lift this off. Have to be careful because those mod jacks are attached to the case. And here is that. This is mostly what was flopping around, is this RF shield here. And you can see that it is this mod has been grounded to the RF shield. Easily removable. Take the RF shield off, and yeah, there we have a some sort of solder-free AV mod. In addition, we can see that some of this, like this, is completely, the heatsink has been bent up somehow. There's been some bending going on here. It almost boggles the mind, like what exactly happened there. And then yes, the power supply is only attached via some tape to that broken piece, and then obviously all the connections that are still connected. There's a little message from JC from 1982. Anyway, yeah, otherwise it kind of looks like it's okay. The reset switch is broken. I have the pieces to it, but it seems like that switch is probably compromised. And I kind of think the power switch is in op as well, though it sounds better, or looks better than the reset switch. So I think the first step is going to be to temporarily disconnect this from the case so I don't end up ripping those wires off there, and then I'm going to start looking at the power supply. I'm not super familiar with these machines. This is the first time I've ever had one of the color computers open. So let's get to it and see what we discover. So I've got the machine taken more apart here on my sofa. I have so many other projects going on right now that this is the only space I could utilize easily. Yeah, so I've got it taken apart. I've got the motherboard out here, as you can see, and despite the really, nasty looking damage to the case, this all looks good to me. I'm no expert at TRS-80 Color Computers. Obviously, this is the first one I've ever looked inside, but I'm pleasantly surprised so far. Optimistic, I guess. As far as the case itself, I went ahead and, as you can see here, this is where that nasty break occurred. And it's kind of an interesting three-dimensional break, it's not easy to get that piece kind of situated back in there without breaking more pieces of it off. So I've got it kind of wedged in there at approximately the right spot, and I'm somewhat reluctant to take it back out. I may just attempt to glue it in place. It actually looks pretty good, considering how bad it looked before. We've got our usual little TRS-80 archaeology marks here. So yeah, the main thing here is that that case piece is snapped back in. You can see a couple of the standoffs are broken off. Boy. Oh yeah, okay. So here and here, I do have those pieces because they were contained within the case. And the power supply itself, let's see, I've got that over here. You know, this is the wrecking ball that did all the damage, of course. This is the thing that's super heavy, and it is usually screwed down into these two standoffs here, and so that whole case piece just got smashed away. But nonetheless, it looks good. It looks super simple to me. Again, I'm no expert. The fuse is good. And the few components that are on there don't seem to be damaged. So I'm pretty optimistic that this is just going to work. Now I have some replacement switches lined up. This is the switch that took the brunt of the damage, and I think this switch is also in-op as well. Like, I think this is supposed to be a toggle type of a switch, and it no longer toggles. I suspect this little copper piece was knocked out in the impact, and I suspect that there was a little arm that is supposed to ride underneath there that makes the connections. Right now this isn't making any connections, so I do have some replacement switches. I'm not an expert in this style of switches, but I got a couple different ones to try that look the part. One of them is an on momentary, one of them is an on-off toggle style. That's the one I have the most hope for. So I'm going to work on getting one of these switches swapped in for this original one. I have another switch that is a momentary contact for the reset switch over here. Yeah, and then we'll probably be able to test this thing, which will be exciting. So let's get that done. So I went ahead and I desoldered the switch from this is the power switch from the color computer. And I'm not sure if you can see, but yeah, it's clearly cracked right there, and I believe this used to be a 4P DT style switch that was on off. Only now the mechanism has been broken enough that there's no clicking. It doesn't latch, basically. And so what I was able to do is I sourced this. I believe this is a new old stock type of a switch. And it is basically the same configuration, and it does latch. So this one's complete. I think this is a good replacement for the power switch. And I did go through on the schematic, and I just toned out the connections that would be made with these pins. And it seems like everything, like this is the right switch for that application. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and solder this one in. I guess then technically we could go ahead and test the computer. Let me just not get ahead of myself. We'll solder this in, and then we'll see where we're going to go from there. Okay, so I've got the two new switches in. We've got a latching 4PDT switch here, and I was able to tone this out, comparing it to the schematic for the Coco, and that seems like it's going to work. So that's pretty cool. And then I also replaced the reset switch. I ordered new caps for these switches, as in the plastic cap, not the capacitor. And they only had red ones, and I kind of like the idea that reset is red. So anyway, that basically gets us all back together. A couple interesting things I did note on this board, or rather one thing at least. The only thing that seems to be bodged is it looks like there's been a little diode added here. It's interesting. Doesn't look factory at all. And of course, the other major non-factory thing is this video and audio out, which we will be testing. Hopefully that all works. Yeah, so I think now all I really have to do is put the power supply back in, connect the keyboard back up, and we should be able to turn this thing on. So let's go ahead and get that all set up. So I'm going to turn my attention briefly here to fixing, or at least permanently attaching this broken out piece in the bottom here. And honestly, it's pretty well attached sort of mechanically now, just by slotting it back in there and sort of snapping it back in place. But I want to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, especially since the transformer is going to get screwed down back into its place here on this support. So I'm going to take sort of a somewhat non-traditional approach here. I think I'm going to try just using some Tamiya cement. This is, of course, is meant for plastic models. I'm going to try using it in this application and just see what it does. I think it should be okay. Worst case is it somehow discolors the plastic or fails to adhere. Like I said, this is actually, it's in there right now. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some of this cement to this side, not to the other side, since I believe it's, I don't know. It may be a painted surface, but in any case, this could discolor the plastic and certainly would melt whatever paint might be on there. I'm going to apply some on this side. It's meant to sort of wick into spaces. Hopefully that doesn't wick too much and penetrate to the other side. I do have some parchment paper down on the other side. So I'm going to give that a shot and we'll see how that works out. Okay, and the glue has dried. If anything, it has made this side look more obvious. The side always looked better than the other side, which, obviously the way the plastic broke out here left more of a visible gap. But I do think this is pretty secure now. And no one really cares what this side looks like anyway. So I'm going to assume that was a success, and I'm going to go ahead and let's get the whole thing reassembled now and into a state where we can test it. Okay, we've got the TRS-80 Color Computer set up here in sort of my overflow room. It's currently sitting on top of an Atari ST, and the reason for that is that in this room I have an actual old television still remaining. So I've got the TV set to the external input, so it should be accepting a composite signal, and I've got the TRS-80 output, the output from the that was added by some previous owner, that should be a composite output, and I've got that hooked up to the TV. So let's turn on the TRS-80 here, which we can do by flicking the switch. Okay, the computer is on, but we're not getting any video. So let's go ahead. I'm going to quickly swap the output to the RF output, and that's why I'm using this television, is because it still supports RF input. So let's do that. Okay, I've got the input on the television switched to RF channel 3. The TRS-80 is also set to channel 3. Let's go ahead and power it on again. Okay, so yeah, cool. It is working. And the TV is giving some really interesting visual artifacts, I guess, as per usual. Anyway, this means, of course, that for some reason, the mod that is in this machine isn't providing the output that it's supposed to. I don't know if the audio is working on it. In any case, let's see if we can troubleshoot why that mod isn't working. To be honest, I'm pretty happy that any of it is working at all, given how the rough time this machine had been through. But yeah, let's go ahead and see if we can diagnose the mod. Okay, so I've done a little bit of poking around and a little bit of research. And it sure seems like this is the so-called Mark Data UVD, Universal Video Driver board, from back in the day. And as far as I can tell, like, I toned out all the connections to make sure the wires actually get to a component on the board. They all do. They all appear to be connected to the correct places on the various components that they're connected to on the motherboard. And the connections seem correct. I have them all disconnected here, but it seems like all the signals make it, at least via checking the connectivity here, continuity rather, to these wires. So yeah, I'm not sure. I suppose one of these components could have gone bad. Of course, I would suspect one of these electrolytic capacitors, but they both look fine. Hard to tell by looking. It's also hard to get this board off of here because the double-sided foam tape that was supplied with the Mark Data kit has proved to be extremely effective, but I think that's the next step. I need to get this off of here, so I think that might be a little bit destructive, only to the adhesive and the foam tape. I'm going to go ahead and try to get that done, and then, I mean, there are only 2 capacitors. Yeah, let's just get to that point where we can see the underside of the board, and then we can see where we can go from there. Okay, I've got that board extracted from the back of the RF modulator case. It's more or less cleaned up. This leftover adhesive residue is extremely tenacious, and it likes to stick to the traces. The fiberglass is relatively clean. The traces are a real pain to get cleaner. What I want to do is take, there are 2 electrolytic capacitors here. I kind of just want to take these out and test them out of circuit. In circuit, which obviously is not very accurate, this one tests out at 1 micro, and this one does not. It's much higher value. So I'm going to start by taking this one out and testing it out of circuit. Okay, so here's the board put back together. So I originally suspected that these electrolytics might be bad. I tested them, they're totally fine. What I ended up doing is I took a bill of materials for the modern replacement for this, and I just verified that everything was the same as the modern bill of materials. So there were a couple of resistors that were different values, and the transistors here, 2 of them are obsolete parts, but they're equivalent to, there's modern ones that I was able to replace them with. So I just kind of replaced everything that seemed wrong or that differed from the modern bill of materials, and I resoldered everything. And I'll put you guys back up on the tripod here, and we'll take a look. Okay, here we go for the test. Now, apologies for the glare, and probably there's focus issues with the TV, but nonetheless, I think you'll be able to see that. Finally, we have working composite out. And yes, the TV in the camera looks significantly worse than it does in person. So yeah, that's pretty freaking sweet. It took a long time to kind of, I wouldn't say troubleshoot, but I sort of trial and error, replacing parts and making it look more like the modern bill of materials. Eventually paid off, which I didn't see how it couldn't, because it's a very simple little circuit board, and you know, continuity seemed good. So cool, we've got a working TRS-80 color computer. I've got some a test ROM on the way, a test cart. So once that gets here, I'll run it through the test. But yeah, we're basically ready to put this thing back together, which is pretty sweet. Okay, I've got the TRS-80 color computer set back up here with my large analog television, and as you can see, my diagnostic cartridge did arrive, and I've run through a number of these tests, and they all seem to be fine. There's the very, very colorful graphics video test. The RAM tests all check out. It's 32K of RAM. Yeah, so all in all, the machine seems to be 100% working. I do want to show you one issue that I ran into that I believe is totally standard, but is interesting nonetheless. And I need to adjust this cartridge a little bit here to get a different image on there. So let me do that real quick and I'll bring you right back. Okay, so we're set up now so that there's an image of Demon Attack on this cartridge. What a wonderful name for an arcade game. We're going to boot up into it, and you'll see it's in black and white. Now, this surprised me. It probably doesn't surprise some of you out there that are more familiar with the color computer. Some televisions just can't support the special NTSC color fringing mode that apparently a lot of games use to get extra colors, is at least my understanding of it. But watch this. So this is going out over the Mark Data video board to composite in. I also have the RF input set up, so I'll just switch inputs, and there we go. Demon Attack is in full color. Doesn't look nearly as sharp, I would say, as the other one, but yeah, that's just, I guess that's a standard thing. I would have thought the television either worked with it or not, and it wouldn't matter if it was using the composite video or RF, whether or not the colors would show up, but I guess it does make a difference. And obviously it's not an issue where the machine isn't displaying color at all. We saw the tests run through, and everything was in color there. So I guess that's just sort of an interesting limitation or gotcha to be aware of with the Tandy color computers. If you know more about that or can explain it more succinctly, please leave a comment. I'd be interested in finding out more about it. I know there is a way to set up the Mark Data board such that it will only be a monochrome signal, but that's not what I have here. So yeah, just kind of an interesting thing. So that's pretty much going to wrap up our look at this neat color computer from the early 80s. It was quite the adventure. It arrived not quite in the shape that I had expected, and it had some interesting challenges. Incidentally, it also came with this very much Radio Shack branded case in pretty good shape. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if that was an accessory that that Radio Shack sold, or if it was an aftermarket thing to specifically for the color computer, I would guess. It does fit very nicely in there. And I did want to mention too that unlike some other sellers that I've dealt with in the past, the seller on this machine was very understanding when I showed them the damage that had been done in shipping, and they were very, very easy to work with, and we got to a point where both of us were more or less happy with it. And in fact, it turned out to be an extremely fun project anyway. So, even if they hadn't worked with me, I still would have probably been totally happy with the way things turned out. But yeah, it's always nice when people are gracious and, stand-up human beings about some of this stuff. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for us for today. Hope you enjoyed. It was my first look at a color computer from Radio Shack, and it was a lot of fun. And hopefully I will see you again here soon.